Heal podcast has been created to explore my favourite ingredients for a long-term, sustainable, healthy human experience. We take an informed look into topics that include nutritional and emotional well-being, as well as expanding consciousness. Heal stands for healthy eating and living, so why not sit back, relax, be present, and enjoy the conversations about this unique gift we were all given, called life. If you feel this podcast has resonated with you, please feel free to share it with your friends, family and colleagues, as the gift of knowledge is something wondrous. Thank you for your open hearts and minds. Alrighty, let's get into some delicious healing. If you would like to become a qualified health coach, then the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, or IIN for short, can help you achieve your goals. I completed their health coaching course many years ago, which has been one of the catalysts for my own journey into what I now love to do, which is to help people achieve greater health through the sharing of information through my books, seminars, podcasts, TV shows and films. I recommend IIN for anyone wishing to pursue a career in the health coaching and wellness space. IIN is a one-year course, so that if you're a full-time worker, busy parent, or wherever you are in your life, it is flexible enough so you'll be able to complete all the required curriculum. Please see the link included in the podcast show notes or my website to access the free sample class and first module of their program. This will give you a great taste of the format as well as the structure, and you can also utilise my special discount that I can offer you if you decide to sign up. Make sure you tell the admissions team that you're part of the Pete Evans Tuition Savings to claim your very substantial discount. Please visit integrativenutrition.com or email admissions@integrativenutrition.com. Chervin Jafarieh is one of the most respected people in the alternative health community. A health and spiritual advisor to A-list celebrities, heads of state and top athletes from all over the world. Mentored at an early age by many trailblazers and pioneers in the field of health, sparked a fire within him that hasn't stopped burning. His background is in biodynamic agriculture, cosmology, herbalism, green architecture and communication. When he isn't travelling the world speaking at events, he spends most of his time researching and sharing his discoveries on radio interviews, podcasts, his social media platforms, his personal show on Dash Radio, and his newly founded health and lifestyle brand, Cymbiotika. Chervin's message is that we have forgotten where we came from and our connection to Mother Earth. He advocates the critical aspects of human biology's relationship with nature and how the modern world has disconnected us from nature's rhythm. Chervin's philosophy is that the key to wellness and disease prevention is through complete homeostasis, which is only achieved through the full understanding of one's mental, physical, and spiritual health. Cymbiotika was birthed by Chervin to bring these ancient concepts back to the modern world, and Cymbiotika's mission is to design a new formed relationship between humanity and nature, which is ultimately how we all begin to heal. To find out more about Chervin, please visit cymbiotika.com. That's cymbiotika.com. Chervin, thank you so much for being a part of our podcast today. How are you, brother?
I'm amazing, brother. It's a long time coming. We've been trying to connect for a minute. I think we were trying to see each other in Toronto about 5 months ago. It never happened, but everything is where it's supposed to be. How you doing?
Mate, fantastic. Just had a nice swim at the beach for sunrise and watched the birds do their thing, which is always a wonderful way to start the day. And yeah, so I wanted to just make sure that I pronounced your name right. Did I say it correctly?
You're close. So it's 2 syllables. Share, like I'm going to share some food with you. And then veen, Chervin, which what that means is it's an old Persian king's name right before Islam came to Iran in 1300. So what it means is Sher is lion in Farsi and Veen is the king of. So to give you some context, I didn't name myself, but my parents, I think they did a good job.
I think they did a great job, and what a beautiful name it is too. I've been following you for a while, and you actually popped up on my radar before I met one of your mentors and one of your family members, actually, David Avocado Wolf. Could you tell us about the relationship that you two have? Because I'd been a big fan of David's work over the last decade or more. And I had the great opportunity of being able to speak on stage with him at an event. And prior to that, when he came to Australia, my wife and I, Nick, invited him over for a beautiful lunch. And that lunch turned into a 10-hour conversation about life, love, and how the universe works, as you know. And I know that you two have a very unique relationship, and I'd love for you to be able to share that for us.
That's a wonderful treat that you were able to have him in your home with your loved ones, with your wife. You know, he's a sage, and I was given the opportunity at an early age to have him as my mentor. So I'm full-blooded Persian, but born and raised in California. He is half. So our mothers are cousins. And at an early age, probably I was about 9 or 10 years old. He's about 11 years older than me. It was kind of around the time he was starting to go into his path and become who he is today. And so I was, he started mentoring me of basic stuff, algebra, geometry, social studies. And it was around, 11 or 12, he started to catch up like, wait, none of this is right. And always looking at things outside of the normal, outside of what's been fed to us, indoctrinated into us. And, he's an investigator, just like myself. It's part of his design. And so I was a child or a kid when he was turning into who he is today. So I got to see all of that unravel and soak all that up. We became, he's like a brother to me. We're best friends. We travel the world all over, together. I've taken a lot of his work, a lot of his philosophy, a lot of the research he's done. I've interpreted it my way. And I'm on my journey over the last, 15 years and taking things and kind of taking things where he left it off and going the next level. And it's been an amazing ride.
And I love what you're saying there, because that to me is what life is about. I was fortunate enough to interview a beautiful man called Didi Miri, who is one of the forefathers or leading scientists and researchers in the cannabis field. And he comes from Israel. And he was echoing the same sentiments as you. And he said, I'm not the best scientist in the world, but how this all works is we all basically take everybody's information and we put it together in a jigsaw puzzle. And he was saying, as a scientist, he might have one piece of the jigsaw puzzle, but then another scientist has the other piece. And if we all work together, we could start to form a better picture than we can individually by actually being humble enough to reach out for others and understand that we do and we don't have all the answers. And I want to explore that a little bit later on, but I'd love for you to talk about that and how you see this working as part of our human evolution.
Yeah, I think that you brought up something that I was actually thinking about earlier today, which is interesting because I was in my meditation early this rise and I was thinking about technology and I was thinking about how there's so many beautiful things that have come with technology and there's so many negative aspects of technology as well. And one of the beautiful things is that we are overloaded with so much information that, we would have never had access to, 100 years ago. And with all that information, what are we doing with it? And are we using discernment when it comes to what is being almost shoveled down into our minds, into our brains, into our subconscious? And if you look at the technologies that are being used right now in terms of marketing, in terms of, getting, people to follow certain philosophies and certain ideologies, it's pretty hectic. So we have to, really figure out what are we doing here? What have we lost because of all of this information as well? And you said a jigsaw, which is interesting because we're kind of putting together a bunch of keys to be able to create a platform that works for us, gives us the best opportunity to be the healthiest versions of ourselves, to hit limitless potential, to knock out karma, to be able to be of service of other people. And unfortunately, I'm not a doomsdayer, but I'm a realist. And I look at where we are today as a society worldwide, and we're in, epidemic levels of confusion, distortion, and frustration. And it comes down on an energetic level. It comes down on a chemical level. There's so many things. So people like us, and there's so many of us out there that are running with the same hearts, that have the same power of trying to get to the next level and trying to peek around the corner and see what's really real. We're all coming together and we can learn from each other. And David was an inspiration for me, as he was for so many other people, as I'm now running and inspiring people, as you are the same way. But I think it really takes a practiced mind and using discernment, and not just believing everything you read and not just following the status quo, and learning why certain things are told to us the way they are, because somebody has an agenda there. There's an energy that has an agenda for you to think a certain way. So we got to go, we got to explore. And that some people that might not be their path. Some people, they just want to watch TV all day long, watch sports and do certain things. God bless them. That's not the ride that I'm on. That's not the journey I chose in this life. I'm going all the way, and everything is under a microscope and analysis, while I'm still in an energetic center of surrender to a certain extent. There's a beautiful balance in that process.
I love what you said. Interestingly enough, and I'll just mention David once more, because you talked about it then. And when he came to Australia last time and I was asked to talk to him, I shared that we were going to share the stage. And it was interesting, the amount of negative criticism that came out of that, because obviously David has a different way of promoting health as I do. One of the things that came up quite often in the social media feed was, Pete, you're going to lose your reputation by sharing the stage with someone like David. And what have you got to gain from it?
Right.
And I was like, well, first and foremost, I don't care about my reputation. You seem to have an issue with it, but I don't care about that type of thing. My opportunity here is to sit with someone and meet somebody that I find fascinating and be able to find common ground and hopefully come in there as a student and be a sponge for some of the information that no doubt we'll share. And as I was saying, 9 or 10 hours that we shared together, I don't even think we talked about food once. It was actually about how to think, how to look at the world differently, different philosophies of life, where everyone thought, I guess, that it was somebody that eats meat versus somebody that doesn't eat meat. And I thought it's such a shallow view that I guess a lot of people have on people. And maybe it's not the shallow view, but I think it comes down to, you said the word discernment before, but I think it's nearly an expectation or what people's perception of somebody's identity should be.
Yeah, I think it's a limiting belief system. And it's fear, right? And it's unknowing and lack of information. And, the system has been designed where if you're a nail that stands out above the rest, you're the first one that's going to get hit. That's an old Japanese saying. And, people like David, who puts himself on the line to talk about controversial subjects, things that, are very polarizing, he's going to be attacked for it. And a lot of people, they can't confront their own issues, and they got to push that energy out and blame someone and find someone and make up stories. 99% of the time, it's an illusion. It's some type of distortion that they've created. I really appreciate that you have that stance and you took that, because I've heard that before. I've heard that said to me before about him. And, he's an easy target for, people that are on the completely different side of the line. He fits like the perfect mold. It's interesting, he gets a lot of clout, like, oh, he's, snake oil salesman or stuff like that, which is like hypocrisy. I mean, it's these large corporatocracy, big agro companies, industrial complex companies that are selling billions of dollars worth of nonsense every day. And, David's out there foraging his own mushrooms and, he's not living lavishly at all. And he's just living off the land and culturing health and wellness, and gives every single person he comes across his time or day. We're going to have that in this reality. there's a lot of people in this world, and we're up against an energy that's caused a lot of distortion and a lot of confusion. Interesting enough, one of David and mine, our spiritual guide or our mentor is Rudolf Steiner. And Rudolf Steiner in 1916, he said, by 2020, this is interesting, by 2020, so about 100 years later, a third of the population are going to be complete zombies. Another third is going to be like, something's wrong is happening here. This material world, this matrix, this domination of fear, this divide and conquer, separation, all the stuff that we're embedded in right now, all of the illusions. A third of the population is going to be confused about it, and like, something's not right. And then the other third are, boom, they're in it. They're completely aware of what's happening, and they're here to make a difference and make a change. And so we just have to realize that not everybody is on our trip, and we can't please everybody. I've learned that because I was the 15-year-old, 21-year-old screaming at people, trying to convince them to look at something differently. And the cognitive dissonance was so heavy that I was pointing at something that was pitch black, and all they could see was white, or vice versa. So that's the age we're in.
So in saying that, do you think it is up to you or others like David or that third that you're talking about to raise the awareness, or do you think it really is just to lead by example and follow your own path? Because you mentioned path before and discernment, and those two words, I actually wrote those down before our conversation because I wanted to, I've written down quite a few words that I just want to explore with you.
Yeah.
And I'd love for you to talk about this path, because I know one of the most challenging things from the people that I interact with that have changed their health and, become different versions of themselves. And it could be through a different dietary change, or it could be through a different way of looking at the world. It could be the simple act like I mentioned this morning. I walked down for a cold water bath in the ocean,
Yes.
And that simple act for some people is enough to really rewire their physiology, and it gives them a different lens to look at the world and be grateful for it. Now, one of the things that most people come to me and say is, Pete, I'm on this path. Like, I feel like a teenager again. I feel like there's more fullness. There's more openness to who I am. But can I get my husband, my wife, my mother, my father, my daughter, my son to embrace this as well? How do I do that? They ask me. And I'm like, lead by example. Everyone's on their own journey. So is it our responsibility for others? Because I know you're going to have a great interpretation of this.
That is the greatest question ever, and that's the paradox that we're in. And I get that every day. I get wives, I get husbands, I get kids, I get mothers, I get them all. How do I, I'm evolving. I see things different. And I want my loved ones to follow suit. I want my loved ones to feel. I want there to be empathy and all these things. So, it depends. I think it just depends on that person. It depends on the situation, on how far you're willing to push yourself and to push somebody. Ultimately, I think everybody has to walk their own path, and you can just be a role model and show your own lifestyle and show your own experiences. But we're all separate souls. We've married people at early ages. We've married people later in ages, but we still evolve. And if someone's not evolving with you, you really got to look at the situation. If they're your kids or your parents, it's different, of course, but you can't push. It has to flow. And I love what you said about, how you went and did a cold water plunge in the ocean. I mean, just you putting your feet on the earth, getting that bioelectric charge, having all your runaway inflammation immediately turned off at the mitochondria, literally at the cell, C-reactive protein shutting off, the ice water, sending electrical stimulation to the body. That's putting you back into your primordial state, the state that Mother Nature designed us to be connected to. This is why people like us are doing ice cold baths that are grounding and earthing, that are every day, that don't sit in Wi-Fi technology, that are detoxing 2 days out of the week, that are constantly aware of what they put in, out, on top of their bodies, that are connected to the sun, the spirit, that are connected to the rotation of everything that's moving in our cosmology, and really being led and integrating the technology of our mother with us, those things zap you back into your primordial force, where we've lost it through the programming of, the modern rituals, which is elementary school, and all the things that come along with, the Western way. And I know that Australia has some of the same aspects that America has, and Canada and the UK, in terms of how they structure kids and all that stuff. All of these things pulled us out of our element. George Orwell had a great quote. He said, "In a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act." And I think that speaks on to what you're asking me. Our ecology, our economics, our heritage, our bloodline, our cultures, our lifestyle, all of this has an effect on our psychology and biology. And ultimately, our sovereignty is being completely dismantled from the jumpstart. Now, these are facts. This isn't esoteric. This is really looking at the truth of how society is structuring everything to keep everything in alignment and keep everything in order. And I use alignment not in a positive way, but alignment in a strategy to turn us into, a system. And spreading the message of truth, finding your role to play in this reality, forging a line in the sand and taking hold of your God-given destiny, your chosen dharma, as Eastern Ayurvedas would say. That is the moment where you choose a decision in your life, if you're all in, or you've already given yourself up to something else that has dominion over you. And my whole thing is being completely sovereign, having no attachment to anything outside of me, and not having any of my thoughts be governed by an energy that's not for my highest and greatest, because I incarnated here for a reason. And if you are in fear of losing people, and in the process you lose yourself just to have somebody else be happy and love you, there's a complete problem there. And we got to stop that, because the mass media is pushing all this individuality stuff, but it's missing the whole point. Individuality is not a matter of like what color I paint my hair, or what clothes I'm wearing to stand out. That's all material nonsense. Individuality is having your own sovereign dharma and path in this life, and not having the people that are programmed around you, including yourself, lay your spell on somebody next to you. So we're all sovereign. We're all here to do something. And that's the vision of paradise. That's when we all get into a vision of paradise where we see a future that's sustainable. We see a future that everybody's thriving. We see a future that no one's in pain and frustration and dealing with sickness. People aren't confused. People aren't jumping into fighting. People are finding different avenues to explore different thoughts and patterns. That's the real revolution. That's where we need to head, because the path that we're on right now is not pretty, and it's causing us to be in the situation where we're at. And it's no wonder why our environment is suffering. There's no reason. If humanity, who is the steward of this reality, we've taken that already. Whether we think that's right or wrong, humans have given ourselves a hierarchy over every animal in existence. So if that's the case, because we can rationalize and we have that deep level of consciousness thought, we have to take this authority and steward it and cultivate it in the most beautiful, harmonious way. And we got to get out of the miasm that we're in, this fantasy illusion of dominance, of structure, of inflicting pain, of this machismo. We got to go back directly to the matriarch system. That's how Mother Nature loves it. And I'm right there. I always see it. It's like I can see it evolving in front of me, and I can see it playing its part in my own life with my own relationships. And I see it working to perfection when we're coming from a place of empathy and love, because we know who we are. I could never have that type of disposition or have this disposition if I didn't know who I was in the first place, if I was being controlled by something else, because my subconscious would be fighting myself the whole time. And that's what everybody's doing. Let me ask you a question. If you take this whole world, you make it 100 people, how many people out of that 100 are completely living what they've carnated here to do, that are in their prime avenue of chosen dharma and are loving every single aspect of it and are bringing their cultivation to this earth? Can you give me a number on that?
No, I wouldn't even guess.
You don't even want to guess because it's probably ridiculously low, and it hurts to even think about it. It hurts to think that people are suffering out there, that people are in pain, and no wonder people are in this religious state where they're ready to ascend somewhere else and go to heaven somewhere else and leave here, which is considered hell. That's crazy. I mean, this reality that we're in right now, this is our heaven, and this can also ultimately be our hell as well. We just have to make sure that we're aware of who we are and how we got to this point.
Alrighty. So from there, I love it. One of the things that you said was all in. Over the years, I've talked about fitting out. I interviewed one of my mentors. He didn't know that he was a mentor, but he was a cartoonist. He's a cartoonist, a political cartoonist here in Australia for the last 30, 40 years. He's been drawing sketches and putting his interpretation of the world out there in our mainstream media, which is so unique. We have this, he's a national living treasure in Australia called Michael Leunig, and he doesn't fit into any box. There was one cartoon that I read over 30 years ago, which actually changed my perception of the world. And I became a fan of his. I was like, wow, that one drawing really pulled at my heartstrings and, more importantly, gave me a different way to look at the world and for me to go on this adventure of finding myself. And when I interviewed him yesterday or a couple of days ago, he was talking about that he just wants to connect with people. And if they feel something from his work, then that gives them a great sense of, he doesn't even use the word pride or anything like that, but he's happy that some of his ideas have gotten out there and made people think differently. And one of the things that I see that you write quite often is that you're all in. What does that mean?
I got to see this drawing. You got to send that to me. I'd love to see it. All in to me means that there's really no holding back. And I've been all in since day one. It's written all over my geometric codes. It's part of my human design. I'm a 1-3 generator, which basically translates to I'm an investigator, I'm an anarchist, and I'm a martyr. And I've been this way since I was a child. And thank God I had, beautiful parents that allowed me to be in full expression and never tried to box me in. And it allowed me to develop the faculties that I'm here today expressing out to the world. And so when I say all in, I say all into everything, into the entire reality, in order to really, understand or understand this illusion. You really have to cast out all illusions and be free of them. I can't overstress that this is the core to everything. This is the core to psychology. This is the core to consciousness. This is the core to being healthy. This is the core of detox. This is at the core of all psychedelics, all sacred ceremonies, all shamanism. At the core of it is being free of all illusions. Anything that's been holding you, anything that's a program that's in your subconscious is keeping you a prisoner. And so once you work through all of that, everything that's been embedded to you since you were in your mother's womb up until 7 years old, all those programs that were captured because your brain was in theta wave, which is an imagination wave and an absorption wave, brain wave, where you can't even control what you're receiving. That's why kids are so impressionable. All of those things are defining everything that we're doing today and our reality and our perspective and our relationships. So releasing all of those, going in there and doing the work, once I was free of all that, I'm basically in a situation where I'm all in, where nothing can hold me back. I'm careful, but I'm not holding back anything. Anything that I know, anything that I can expose, anything that I can learn, as you said earlier, being a student 24/7, that's where I'm at right now. Everything is on the line. Everything is important. Everything is critical. And if you look at things like it's not critical, what are you doing here? You're just going through the stages of your life, and we're not here long. That our lifespan in this carnated human body is quick. I'm in my mid-30s right now. Mother of God, I was a kid the other day. I can't believe it. And so just like that, in life, I just went through the most tremendous loss ever, the most hardcore loss ever. And I walked through that whole thing with my family, and it puts perspective. And if you're gonna try and you're gonna shoot for the best, go all the way. Otherwise, don't even start. And this could mean, you're gonna lose friends. You might lose your partner. You might lose a married one. You might lose relatives. You might even lose your mind for a little bit. It could mean that you might have to fast for a month. It could mean that, you might have to lay in a park alone for a couple of weeks by yourself. It could mean you go to jail. It could mean, anything. It could mean mockery or isolation from your peers. And all of this, everything you'll do, despite the rejection and all the worst odds, everything that you're going to imagine will come to fruition. There's no feeling like that. And you will never be alone with a higher being like you would be in this moment. And all the nights, every night that you put your eyes to sleep, fire will be brewing in you. You will live straight through with like the ultimate sacrifices and come out on the other end in charge of your own destiny. And this isn't a spiritual, airy-fairy perspective. This is intrinsic material world scientific proof that you can change your epigenetics. You can evolve through epigenetics. And that's exactly what epigenetics is. It's interesting. I just parlayed right into that. Epigenetics is the idea, or not the idea, the proven concept that your lifestyle is above your genetic profile. Meaning that anytime anything that you think and is around you has such an influence on your genomic codes and turning on certain gene patterns that you can switch them off, switch them on just by your thoughts. So ultimately, if we're recycling our cells every 90 days, minus a few brain cells and heart cells, you're going to be a new body in the next 3-4 months. What the heck are we doing? We got to feed ourselves the right things. And that's what All In is all about. Becoming superhuman, limitless. And I don't mean that just on a physical aspect. I mean just on becoming emotionally God-sent, where you're connected to the higher realms, and every moment is an opportunity to see something and learn something. That's when you're all in, where you're encoded with magic 24/7, and you've stepped outside of the construct paradigm that we're wrapped up in this matrix, this schedule, this Gregorian calendar, December, January through December, all the months, and then the 52 weeks, and then the Monday through Sunday, and then the 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. All of that's an illusion. That has created this separation of being present in this reality. Being all in is being aware that every single second is brand new. Every breath is a gift. I'm sure you've heard it, and you might have even experienced it. Everybody says this has become mainstream. It's beyond cliche. As you get older in this material body, time seems to speed up, where you start to feel like the years are going by faster. And before you know it, a year or 5 years or 10 years has gone by. That's easily explainable because your brain picks up these patterns and these systems that we're in. We get used to waiting for Christmas and that holiday and that 3-day weekend and this start of the football season and whatever it is, all of these things, this birthday party, this thing, this becomes so monotonous that the brain, after 10, 15, 20, 30 years of it's like clockwork, and you miss out on everything in between. And when you miss out on everything in between, because your mind is only focused on those moments that are upcoming, because it's programmed, the experience you've already had is programmed, you lose out of everything. So you're not present. When you're not present, you don't care about what you eat. You don't care about how you're making love to your partner. You don't care about what you're reading, what you're learning, what you're experiencing, how you're bettering yourself, making new relationships, becoming a pillar to the society, becoming a steward of our Mother Earth. So all of those things we escape us by not being present. Once you start reverse engineering back into childhood state, back into becoming that child who looks at a sunset and can't believe what they're seeing, that's when we start getting our life back. That's when we start becoming all in. And to segue into, Rudolf Steiner, that's what Waldorf schools are. Waldorf education is the concept that we can't force feed a curriculum to a 4-year-old. A 4-year-old's brain is still evolving, and they need to experience things on their own. So Waldorf schools, instead of giving you a curriculum and a program, they just create an incubator. And within that incubator, a child is allowed to experience everything. Rudolf Steiner talked about that in many of his lectures, that in order for us to connect to the supersensible world, we must experience and have our own revelations. It's not something that can be indoctrinated from someone else. You and I, we can learn different things about epigenetics, about science, about biology, about methylation, about detoxification, and about cosmology, from masters, and take our own assumptions from it. But nothing can take away from the experience of being part of something of the natural world and having your own interpretation and being so connected to it. That's why I really am looking at this modern mechanistic world that we're in right now, with the iPads and the iPhones and the TV and the YouTube and all that stuff, as being very problematic for children, because it's taking their innate ability to connect to everything that's around them, that's real, alive, breathing, and sucking them out into an artificial world. And when you suck a child out of our artificial world, they're not going to develop the faculties of what a true human being is, which has empathy, which has love, which has courage, which cares about things in nature, which cares about their family. And you can see that as a general pattern that's been going on through the last couple generations. And so being all in is being aware of everything. It's not having one specific aspect of life and locked in. It's looking at the core of it, so that everything around it can start healing, and you can start really making an impact and bettering your own life.
I love it. Something you mentioned there, I mean, I could go down many different paths with you here, but one thing that resonated with me, and I know you're not shy in sharing your own, I guess, appreciation of plants in the world. And one of the things that I noticed with you is you have an amazing, I guess, psychedelic garden that you are nurturing. And I'm very curious as to why you think that psychedelics and plant medicines at the moment are becoming so, and I don't want to use the word popular, because that puts it and labels it into a basket that it may not be popular down the track, but to go through these journeys and listening to you talking about our generation and the generation after us and before us, and even my childhood was spent in front of the TV a lot more, many, many more hours than I guess my parents were or their parents were. And it had definitely an impact on my life, to the point where I could see it was educational for me in some aspects. And now I have a deep appreciation of really great directors and how they can put together a story for us to tantalize all of our senses. I guess the popularity or the calling of these plant medicines to so many of us is a way to nearly shock us into a reconnection to nature, but more so even to ourself, because it shatters the illusion of what we've been brought up to understand as real. And I don't know whether that makes any sense. I'm trying to articulate it the best way.
No, you're doing a great job. It is becoming more mainstream. I mean, it is what it is, because I think entheogens, and that's, we'll call it an entheogen. You know, an entheogen is a plant substance, or it could come from an animal, that takes us closer to God, connects us with spirit, connects us deeper with our primordial life force. And I think we've gone so off course, so off stray, that it was almost like we had to go this route where these medicines are becoming popular because people are just so sick of what's happening. And if you look at modern history, way before you and I were around, if you look at like the 60s and 70s, we were at a time where, we were at war with Vietnam. That was, a constructed war, manufactured war. I don't want to get into that. And most of the population besides middle America in the United States were like, fuck this. This is terrible. What is this? Why are we bombing these countries? Why are we invading these countries? We're not going to win this war. What are we doing over here? And that pushed, the Woodstock era. It pushed the entheogenic revolution in America, and that came back on strong. And that was in the form of psychedelics like, lysergic, LSD, mushrooms, peyote, which is mescaline, other forms of medicines. And the government was like, we can't have all these hippies coming together, holding hands, blissing out, loving each other. We got to make these, Schedule I drugs. So overnight, all of those medicines, I call them medicines because they come from the plant world, became a Schedule I drug. And what came right after that was all of a sudden they opened up, I can't remember the number, it's mind-boggling. And then it doubled the following year and tripled. So all of a sudden, they took away psychedelic medicine and they started stuffing alcohol at a rapid pace into the mouths of Americans. And then they brought in cocaine. And so what's fascinating is entheogenic compounds, they lower your ego and they're good for you to a certain extent, meaning that they can't kill you. And some are known to detoxify your body. They're just highly alkaline. But alcohol and cocaine are terrible for you and they raise your ego. And I always find that very, very fascinating that most things that raise your ego are terrible for you, like sugar, like caffeine, like alcohol. And a lot of these plant compounds, they lower your ego and they happen to be good for you. And so for me, I've never been on this like crazy psychedelic quest, and I've done it all. We've taken things to the limit. I just have such a respect for the medicine. I have such a respect for the tradition. I have such a respect for the teachers of the plant world. And I was able to go through a lot of my own pains in this life through the medicine world. And for me, it's getting to a place where you can liberate yourself and be able to look at things that ultimately could cause such fear. And the closer you are to dying and still living, which they call samadhi, the act of dying and still living in this life, brings you to an awareness. And it goes back to what we were just previously talking about in terms of removing the programs. And that's why a lot of people sit and do ayahuasca ceremonies and other entheogenic ceremonies, because, for example, the active ingredient in ayahuasca, it's a mixture of, yopo and chacruna, and it's a brew, but in there is DMT. DMT is dimethyltryptamine, where you can see everyone talking about it online. But interesting enough, we make it in our own brain, endogenous. DMT is released through our pineal gland and through other neurotransmitters in our brain. And it's a variation of tryptophan. And DMT, based on my experience and awareness, for me, is the material world alchemy that transports the human soul into the body and brings it out. And I'm just saying that based on experience and also understanding the cultures that laid before us. A lot of the ancients, the Mayans, Sumerians, a lot of them believed that the soul would carnate into the mother's womb around day 40. And modern biology today shows us that around day 40, the pineal gland floods the embryonic sac with DMT. That's a very, very interesting circumstance and coincidence. And as you know, I don't believe in coincidence. Based on my experiences with these medicines, I can tell you that that resonates deeply with me. And so for me, I'm not a fan of people doing psychedelics without it being in a full ceremony with shamans and having an integration aspect to it, which is probably more important than the trip, is being able to cultivate your experience. Because if you're not cultivating and grounded and going into a follow through where you're taking the experience and emanating every tool that you learn, then it just becomes a drug. And I think it's very, very disrespectful. And that's, again, that goes back to having the deepest reverence for the plant and animal kingdom. Entheogenics, I mean, that could be a solution to a lot of our problems. Can you imagine all our politicians all sat together and did ayahuasca or did something even more radical than that? That would be fantastic.
Yeah, it's interesting you speak about that, because a lot of people that I speak to about psychedelics, they go, oh yeah, I've had a trip before. I've tried LSD or mushrooms 10, 20, 30 years ago, and I had a really bad experience. And how on earth can that be good for you? And it's like, well, what was your intention when you actually took that? And where were you and who were you with? And did you have, again, going back to the intention of what that experience was going to be for you? Or were you open to everything? And I'd love for you to talk about intention for a minute there, because for anybody that is considering going down this path, which you probably can't advise people to do because it's something that calls to you, but how important is intention for everything?
I mean, intention is literally what we're here to do, is to do things with intention. And if you're not setting an intention before you do anything, for the most part, then you're completely not present, let alone going into something psychedelic. I mean, that's like the grandest area of intention. But every single experience that you're doing, every, breath has to have intention. We forget to breathe. Breath is life. That's the core of everything. That's your life force. That's your chi. That's your prana. All of it. And if you're not in intention with your breath, then your rhythmic cycle and your circadian rhythm and your biology starts to suffer. I'm just giving you that perspective. That intention is so critical, just on the things that we take for granted. On autonomic systems that are already functioning on their own, we still need to have intention. And so when it comes to psychedelic stuff, the intention you set for yourself or your psychedelic journey should be something that's so deep to your heart. What you wish to gain from the experience, what you wish to learn, speaking to the interdimensional beings, speaking to the plant kingdom, speaking to your ancestors. Whether you're taking ayahuasca, ibogaine, peyote, it doesn't matter. Your intention should be tied to what you want to gain from the experience. I always ask myself, what would I like to let go of that no longer serves me? What do I want my future to look like? Who are the people I would like to forgive? In what areas can I forgive myself? How can I use this experience for my greatest good and everybody around me? And I start thinking about my intention for a few days, maybe up to a few weeks before I go into any type of medicine journey. And as I begin to explore my personal reasons for healing, I start getting very specific when setting my final intention. And once I discover my intention behind what's going to heal me, I see and feel and write it out so it resonates deeply. What you got to understand is psychedelics are powerful medicines. And they can offer you a real clear indicator to your spiritual, mental, and emotional perspective in life. And they'll allow you to release a lot of stored baggage that's been sitting there. When you go in with a clear idea of what you want to gain, you're going to get the results you're looking to achieve. And it's extremely powerful. And, psychedelic medicine, it offers a change. Whether you want like to move out of an addiction of some sort, because a lot of people are going through certain ceremonies because they have addictions in their life. And how could we not have addictions in our life? We're not present to every moment. We're so out of the construct. We're in illusion. When you're in illusion, you're reaching for things. And when you're reaching for things, you get addicted to things. And that can come in the form of food. That can come in the form of, sex. That can come in the form of pain, frustration, being mean to someone, off-gassing that energy off to someone. Those are addictions. Addictions are across the board. So if you're going into a ceremony looking to kick one of those addictions for good, and you're looking to let go of that trauma and discover your true purpose in life, overcome all of the illusions, it's really important that when you're going in, that you have that intention in place and you have an identity of what it looks like in your life without those, dominions clutching at you and holding you at bay, and in turn causing pain and frustration in all your surrounding and in your life. Most psychedelics medicines, they work deep in the human psyche. And for me, they uncover parts of myself sometimes I've never existed. It's fascinating. I'll get into places where I'm like, whoa, like I had no idea. And I think it's suffice to say that when I experience these medicines, it's a lot different than what, you hear other people say. Because everybody, and you previously mentioned that someone said, 20 years ago, I took mushrooms or I took acid or whatever, and it was terrible. Why would I ever want to do that again? We're evolving humans, and with evolving cosmology, with evolving spirit, and every medicine is different and cultivated different, and they're all different guides and different experiences. Not one experience is the same, ever. They're all different. And so we got to lose those ties that are holding us back. We got to have an intention setting forward before we do anything, and it'll pretty much guide you and anchor you through your experience. When, I said that the integration, I think, is the most important part. So you've set the intention, you've taken time, you've detoxed your body, mind, body, and soul. You've written down a lot of stuff. I strongly believe in the power of the written word, the alchemy of transcribing onto a paper or a book. I don't mean typing. I mean actually writing it. There's a power to that. Once you go through that and you go through the psychedelic experience, reflecting on the intention when the experience is over is key. Because when it's over, you come back to your intention and you can gauge what you've learned from it. And your intention will serve to help further understand the insights you've gained throughout the entire experience and what lessons you can now bring to your conscious reality. The intention you're going to set into the psychedelic experience can offer an excellent reference point for reflection after the journey is over. That's important to really, really grasp. Healing with psychedelics, in my opinion, can be one of the most enlightening experiences a person can have. And if you choose to do such, really honor it. Do it legally, do it safe, do it with the right people, set the right intentions again. Really understand the medicine. It's shocking to me. Brother, I get so many messages, people asking me, hey, should I do, what's up, Chervin? Should I do ayahuasca, or should I smoke toad medicine like Mike Tyson did? Because I know you were part of that whole thing. Or should I do this, such and that, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, immediately, most of the time I don't answer those questions because it's just not something that I want to engage in one-on-one with people I don't know. But most people, they don't even know what they're talking about. They don't even know what ayahuasca is. How can you have reverence for a medicine without understanding the indigenous and how that was used, and the pharmacology of it. So let alone just understanding the indigenous heritage of that plant, but really understand the pharmacology aspect, how it works in the human body. For me, it's like I find myself to be right in the middle of the Trinity, where one side is the material world and one side is the ethereal, spiritual world, immaterial world. And I find harmony right in that middle. That's divinity through the Trinity. That's another Rudolf Steiner experience, is that we must find balance of the polarizations and look at this world non-dualistically. And in the end, a person will only change as much as they're truly willing to do. Psychedelics can be a catalyst, but the real authentic evolution will come from within the individual, will come from within the real integration work. In the weeks following the psychedelic experience, revisiting your intention and what was uncovered in that journey will assist you and help you realize what your intention was in the first place. And for me, psychedelic healing can be probably, again, the most transformative experience a person can face in their lifetime. That's how serious this stuff is. And accepting what is sacred in this life here can evoke some of the most powerful physiological changes in one's bodies and one's destiny. So how is that, brother?
Right. I love it. What a beautiful explanation. And it's interesting because you talked about earlier what it would take for somebody to, to have that growth. And you mentioned, you may need to lose your mind for a little while. And, many times I've actually been in that space of because as you said, to be in the center of the matrix or between the ethereal and the material world can sometimes, once you've had these journeys, it can make, again, through our lens of perception, it can be really difficult or challenging to accept what we see now after an experience like that. And very hard to explain that to anybody, especially because everybody that either has or hasn't gone on one of these journeys has a very different experience than what you have. It's not like there's a common denominator, except possibly that you may experience yourself dying in that experience, as you mentioned before about samadhi. And that can be extremely challenging and enlightening and liberating, but it could also be very frightening for people.
Absolutely. 100%. Well said.
So there's a couple of words that I still want to talk to you about, and I know we're coming up to an hour, so I'll try to be quick. But authentic self. You mentioned being authentic before, and I feel like there's something about you that you express yourself through language. I think you really take into consideration everything that you share, and I'm just talking about how I interact with you on a daily basis through social media, and the words that you use and the language that you use to communicate, I guess, your authentic self. And in this very strange paradoxical world, and you're using technology to share, but you're also telling people not to get addicted to this technology as well. So I guess the word that I'm looking for, and I think will sum up exactly what this conversation today is about balance. And how do you navigate these worlds to stay grounded, to have that balance, to use technology but not abuse it, to appreciate food and again but not abuse it, but also, I guess where I'm going with this is I saw your post just before we chatted, and you've got some new devices using technology that will be part of your healing protocol. But at the same time, how do we not get lost down that rabbit hole of, I guess, addiction to those sort of things as well? So again, finding that balance. How do you know when you're not in balance?
That's a great question. Wow. That's probably my main paradox is, well, let's start with, the technology of social media and communication. So as you know, I'm the founder of Cymbiotika, and my whole goal with it was to create and spark a revolution into a lifestyle of awareness and education and knowledge of higher levels of attainment so everyone can become sovereign. That's the whole point of Cymbiotika. That's what Cymbiotika means. Cymbiotika is a harmonious cultivation of when multiple carbon-based life forms come together and create a symphony of epic proportions and holy bliss. And in order for me to create this movement, one of the aspects was technology and media. And for me, it's showing my authentic self. And so it's interesting. Part of me is like, wow, what you see on social media with me is 1% of my life. But at the same time, I show so much of my vulnerability, my lifestyle, my awareness, my pains, my loves, my triumphs, that I'm starting to really think that you're getting a lot more than that 1%. You're really seeing a perspective. And I think that's why I've created such an organic growth following and such a movement that's happening right now. Because I'm getting people like yourself. I have, top tennis players in the world. I have top athletes in the world. I have the top boxer in the world. I have many professional athletes here in the country, actors. They're all coming to me. They're all reaching out to me now and wanting to get some of my perspective on either health, wellness, longevity, life, and all those things. This, for me, it doesn't matter to me. I'm not starstruck. I've been around Hollywood, since I was a kid. I've been growing up in Southern California. I've seen it all, gone through it all. For me, it's more if I can make more of an impact by getting into, connecting with other people that have connections to be able to create influences and be the seed and be able to drop seeds into different people. And that's part of the positive of this technology. The technology is very, very dangerous. You can get caught up in so many ways and you can lose sight of your own presence. Me and David were actually having this conversation 1 week ago. It's so funny that this is coming up. I haven't even thought about it since. Is that when we were kids, or forget about kids, when we were 100 years ago, all you knew in terms of your perspective of consciousness was what was in front of you and what you were touching and what you can feel, unless you were in some type of deep meditation or you were reading a book. Other than that, your whole reality was based on your perspective, your life, your vantage point. Now, today, because of social media, because of TV, because of movies, because of all of these technologies, now your reality is chopped up into millions of realities. I mean, just scroll through social media. That's why I don't scroll a lot. You're all of a sudden in 1 second, you're watching a video of someone's life, or you're watching someone's perspective. Boom, 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 boom. And all of a sudden that's taking you out of your own presence. And that's limiting. Now, that's the negative aspect. And because we've been doing that since we were kids, because we grew up in a modern technological mechanistic world, especially in the 80s, which was running rampart in so many areas, like worst ever, we have lost some of our natural organic ability of our own powers, whether that's telepathy, whether that's connection, whether that's our own primordial life force, whether that's connecting to our destiny, because we haven't built, it's like a muscle. Those things, you hear it all the time. A friend of mine, Jim Quick, he's always talking about how do you get your brain back, because we're using our phones to map out how to get to a certain destination, or we're using our phones now to remember people, to remember our phone numbers. We're losing things that are inherently we forget about, that are so important for us to develop as a faculty. Like all of us, we like to train, we like to work out, I like to exercise, I do everything from outside in the trees to in the gym to sprinting to all of it. When I'm doing that, I'm breaking down muscle tissue, and my body's rebuilding it with protein synthesis and amino acids and energy and all that stuff, right? The same thing needs to happen with our mind and our primordial force, but we're giving the workout to our technology. And by doing that, we're losing some of our God-given destiny powers to get to where we're supposed to incarnate to. So I think it's really important that we're aware of this. And by being aware of this, then we can start to reverse engineer what we've lost. So I think that's really important. Back to your main question, for me personally, I don't know how long I can do this for. I feel like I've been giving a lot of my time and energy on my experiences and wanting to share it with people. It's become almost like, wow, like I can't even enjoy the moment for myself unless I share it so other people can see it. And I'm starting to see that. And I'm not scared to admit that, because I'm honest with myself and I'm aware of it. And I stare at myself in the mirror and I look at myself in the eyes. That's usually the time when you really get down to the facts. I always tell people that's a really good way to get to know yourself, is stare at yourself as long as you can. If it takes, I've done that for 36 hours. Imagine that. And I was able to reveal that why am I doing so much on the media platforms and wanting people to experience it, and I really get to the gnosis of it, where I had gnosis and I can experience, that moment of, aha, this is why I'm doing it. For me, ultimately, I truly want people to see that there's another way than the way that they're living. I truly want to inspire people. I truly want to give people hope and have them have access to resources that are available to them. And I want to bring joy to people. It's just part of what I am, for better, for worse. Do I think I can go on like this forever? Absolutely not. No way. And so when it comes to technology, I think that when it comes to social media in particular, we have to be careful on who we're watching and how we're portraying our message out, because it's capturing somebody or you're being captured yourself. And you don't want to get caught up into that Maya. And then when it comes to like resources and stuff like, I have, all kinds of healing apparatuses and modalities in my home. I use discernment whenever I make a purchase, and most of the technology that I have in my home, I get it. I understand how it works. I've been around this technology for a long time when it comes to like, Rife machines, microcurrents, anything, all of it. And I've been around it for so long that I understand it. So I think that there's nothing wrong with that as long as you're not relying on it for everything. Ultimately, your nutrition, your wellness, your mindset is the key to your longevity.
And I guess that brings us back to balance and understanding when you're spending too much time on this or not enough time on that. So what's your barometer to understand when and if you get out of balance?
Well, if I'm not in the moment, like if I'm taken out of my own, experience where I'm so outside of the present, and I'm really starting to create like a discipline where I can feel that, wait a second, I'm not present. No, this has to stop. I can't engage. I got to turn this off, or I can't look at this. And again, because I'm in the building stages of Cymbiotika, it's a paradox I'm in. I'm still trying to figure it out, brother. It's wild, because part of me, it's like, for example, I have my own show that's starting on Dash Radio in a few weeks. I'm getting together the people I'm going to have on. You're going to be one of them. I'm picking up David at the airport in a few weeks in Oregon. We're going to be filming at one of our cannabis farms because we're going to be harvesting, all these things. And I'm noticing that I'm looking at this whole experience through the lens of media versus the joy of being out in that field and harvesting like the most beautiful varieties of cannabis of all time, and putting my hands in the soil and breathing in that Oregon air and dipping into the ice cold river over there and having so much fun with my family and friends. And then I'll notice like, wait, I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about, wow, we're going to get some really epic content. I can't, you know what I mean? Like, so you see what I'm saying? There's a paradox there, right? So I think we have to find a balance where it's not invading the full psyche and taking away from the experience, because we're never going to have it back. I don't care if you watch it over and over a million times till you're 150 years old. It makes no difference. The only time that matters is that experience. Everything else is an illusion. And that's what true love is, right? True love is the embodiment of that present moment. And so, again, for me, that is the paradox I'm in, and I'm working on it right now. I have so much that I want to share. It's like, it bothers me. There's so many more posts. I can post 100 posts an hour of fascinating revelations and ideas and conceptuals and new things I'm learning on gene mutation and detoxification and methylation and omega-3s. And I mean, I can go on and on. Every product, I have 12 new products on its way. I'm going to ship them all to you so you can have them. There's so much to talk about. There's so much to learn. And I think it's just finding a balance that flows with your flow state where you're not forcing it and it's coming out organically and you can still experience life outside of the technological era.
Well, it was interesting when you said you were going to pick up David and go to the cannabis farm. These two beautiful, we have these birds in Australia called rainbow lorikeets, and they're like parrots. They're beautiful. They've got all the colors of the rainbow, and they just perch themselves on a beautiful tree that I'm looking at while you were talking. And, they were fully present in the moment, and my eyes were just drawn to them, playing, feeding, and expressing their authentic self. So I'm sure that you and David will have a lot of joy sharing your unique selves as well during that process. And I can't wait to see what you come up with.
Thank you for sharing all that, by the way, about the birds.
Brother,
I'm doing the same thing. I'm looking at a blue jay right outside my window. It's just frolicking around.
Talking about this technology, I love doing the podcast. Actually, it's my favorite job in the world, is interviewing people and having a conversation with them. And every day, no matter where I am doing this, I fixate on nature. And at the moment, I'm in my house in Sydney, and I watch. I've got some native trees here that we put in for our family home, and they're called lily pillies. And every day, I just have a look and just see, okay, it's a little bit bigger than it was yesterday, and talking about growth and evolution and our experience. And every day, looking at those trees just reminds me, it's not a race. Just be yourself incrementally. You can grow incrementally, or you can grow rapidly. I've got a new seedling in the ground, actually, and it's growing rapidly. But then I look at the larger trees, and they're growing incrementally. But they're all expressing themselves, and nothing really seems like in a rush. It's like, slow down, Pete, slow down.
Absolutely.
So, mate, I just want to say thank you so much for your time today. People, if you're looking for more information about Chervin, sorry. I've got it. I think I got it then, didn't I? They can follow you on Instagram or Facebook. And obviously the Cymbiotika products that I actually just got a delivery this week. So thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to exploring with your... How do I pronounce that correctly?
It's astaxanthin.
And you've mixed that with DHEA, is that correct?
It's DHA, which is docosahexaenoic acid, which is the main fat, long chain fatty acid that's made up of your brain, eyes, and central nervous system. I get that from Nova Scotia, and then the astaxanthin is coming directly from Iceland. These are microalgae.
So the question I've got for you, and this will wrap up our chat, is this is your first product that you've put on the market, I believe, in this form. Why is it good for me? Why should I be taking that?
Well, your whole unique electrical system is governed by DHA. So grounding to the earth, getting sun in, all of those things, developing neurotransmitters are all designed and implemented by the structure of docosahexaenoic acid. And it's the most important nutrient that a mother can pass on to the child while she's carrying a baby, nursing a baby, and throughout our lifetime. And it's the core of the food web. The core of the food web comes from algae. And it's why the fish oil industry is, it's a $20 billion a year industry. The problem is that a lot of fish are polluted And instead of going to the third source, why don't we go to the primary source? The fish are getting their DHA from eating sea creatures that are feeding on algae. So we went to a heirloom strain from Nova Scotia, extracted it using warm water, no solvents, and we're providing live, fresh, beautiful DHA and mixed it with the strongest antioxidant Mother Nature's created, which is astaxanthin. And that's another microalgae. So this is beautifying. It's good for your skin. It's good for your eyes. It's good for your heart. It's good to lower, bad cholesterol. It's good for everything, every biological system in our bodies. It's necessary to have. This was one of the main things that I found that I magnetized to, and I was like, wait a second, we can't get this from land-based agriculture. And how come all the longest living populations are all next to marine areas? So like Japan and Scandinavian countries. And if you look down at the diets, the Mediterranean diets, what's the main thing that sticks out? And that's omega-3s. And we're getting so much omega-6 in our diets from all the foods that we need to have that balance. So this is a beautiful way of balancing it out. And it's pure and it's the best ever. And I just, upgraded it through the roof, and it releases in a few weeks, dude. You won't believe what's coming. I added phosphatidylcholine to it, and I added sea buckthorn, all organic. Everything's organic. And so this is going to encompass omega-3 and omega-7. And then right next to that, I have a CBD product with DHA, with tetrahydrocurcumin, and a few other goodies. There's so much amazing stuff coming out. And the B12 that you just got, did you get the B12 or did you just get the DHA?
I just got the DHA.
Oh, no. Okay, so this B12, this is a game changer. I mean, this right here has never been done before. It took me a year to develop this. This is basically 90% of the B12 that's out there is cyanocobalamin. That's what people are getting injections with. That's what's fortified in all the food. But that's a synthetic, and your body has to try to methylate that. It's a terrible job at doing that. And a lot of people have a gene mutation that can't properly methylate. And so they're taking supplements that have cyanocobalamin and, folic acid in it, and that is wreaking havoc in your system. So I created a synergistic blend of methylcobalamin, and I didn't stop there. I added adenosylcobalamin, which is the other variation of B12, and that's instant energy. And I added that with L-methylfolate and shilajit in the form of fulvic minerals, organic wild berry essential oil, monk fruit, and I turned it into a micelle form, which is smaller than liposomal. Are you familiar with liposomal technology?
Mm-hmm.
So we took liposomal and made it even smaller in a mycelated form, which means it's encapsulated with a phospholipid. So that way it doesn't get destroyed in the mouth, doesn't get destroyed in the gut. So it's kind of like food, like you're eating food. Our food's so demineralized that we have to use supplements. Ultimately, we should not be using supplements, but our food is so demineralized that we have to use supplements now because we're not getting the nutrition that we need. And so this is a way of getting it to the intestine so it passes the brush-border barrier and absorbs to perfection. This is a game changer. I got to get you on this immediately. You're going to be my Cymbiotika right-hand man in Australia. I know it.
So my question to you then, as you know, I do eat grass-fed meat and organic meats. It's part of my diet. So with my B12 levels that I have had tested, they seem very, very good. So why would somebody that, like myself, that does gravitate towards wild-caught seafood and also grass-fed and organic meats, and especially nose-to-tail eating, why would I need a supplementation of B12?
Okay, so because you're eating grass-fed, quote unquote, then that means that you're able to get the nutrition. You're able to get the passed on nutrition that is going into that grass-fed animal. You're talking about bovine, right? Are you eating like cow?
Cow, game, lamb.
Okay, so all of it, yeah. So because it's grass-fed, you're getting a lot of that nutrition in there. Absolutely. I mean, if it was commercial, no, it'd be actually you're getting omega-6s in there. And your body would be completely inflamed. So you're doing a good job. I'm not, for me, it's not about choosing sides and saying, someone needs to be plant-based or they need to be this or need to be that. That's your decision. I I don't care what anybody does as long as they know what they're doing. I believe in biodynamic farming. I'm a Demeter licensed biodynamic farmer, which ultimately the cattle, the cow is in the middle of the farm, nutrient densing and nutrient dropping all over the one organism system farm. So I believe in that balance. In terms of what you might be missing is the methylating compounds, L-methylfolate, fulvic minerals, and all those things can be a welcome addition to what you're not getting. And I would definitely check and see what your genome code is and understand exactly what's happening in terms of methylation. Because it doesn't matter if you have adequate B12 in your blood, it's important to see if you have that gene mutation. That gene mutation is MTHFR mutation. And that basically stands for methylene tetrate hydrofolate reductase. And that gene mutation, 60% of the population have that. And they call it a dirty gene, if you will. And if you have that, you get high homeocysteine levels. You're not able to detoxify the cell. You're not able to do the Krebs cycle properly, which is basically restoring ATP, restoring cellular reproduction, all of those things. If you have one variant that can contribute to so many health issues. So I always recommend people to see if you have that. Most of the population does. So if you're not properly methylating, something like this in addition can really help your body get the toxins out of your system. So even if your B12 levels are high, this is an added level of stimulating cellular reproduction and detoxification, because you're not getting L-methylfolate through the steak. And so this is supposed to synergize with whatever it is that you're doing. This is an added benefit. And then with the fish, I have a perspective. Like, I'll go to Kauai. I live in Kauai part-time. If I'm in Kauai and I'm out in the ocean, I'll have a fish right there. Absolutely. 100%. But most of the commercial caught fish in this world, not only is it destroying our ecosystems like a mother, but at the same time, they're carrying so many homeopathic doses of heavy metals and plastics and all kinds of particulates and poisons. And that's getting passed on, especially in the fish oil industry. The fish oil industry is terrible. I mean, they cast out 2-mile-long nets and let them sit there for a week and let animals come in there and drown in the nets. Dolphins, sharks, fish, turtles, they got to move. They have to move. Turtles, they don't, but the other animals do. The whales, they got to move to get that water through their gills. They drown out there. Then they pull all that stuff in and they melt them to a mush, and then they put them through a molecular distillation. It's wild. And then they add a little tocopherol, and there you go. You got your fish oil that's being sold everywhere in the world, and all the big block retail places. Little do you know how much damage that's causing, how many poisons are in there homeopathically, and also that it's oxidized. Oxidized oil in any form is terrible on the human body. And so for me, these are unique ways to get clean products and clean nutrients into the system rapidly, effectively, without any pain or any harm. That's the truth of it.
Fantastic, brother. And just to finish off, I know you're a big fan of Rumi and also Steiner, and I'd love for you to share with us one of your favorite sayings or philosophies for our audience, or even your own.
Rudolf Steiner, I mean, he was a sage. I mean, he was a clairvoyant sage, and the amount of work he did in a very, very dark time. I mean, he grew up in the late 1800s and early 1900s, right around World War I, and he was chosen as the leader of the Theosophical movement by Madame Blavatsky, and then soon left that and created anthroposophy, which is the understanding of our connection to spirit as a man. And, he had many beautiful quotes. I mean, one of them is, love starts when we push aside our ego and make room for someone else. And it's so fundamental. And so there's so many truths to that. Another one is, if we do not believe within ourselves this deeply rooted feeling that there's something higher than ourselves, we shall never find the strength to evolve into something higher. I mean, that speaks to me, to the cell, like not even a frontal cortex conscious level. I mean, deep, intrinsic to my cell when I feel into what he's saying. Our highest endeavor must be to develop free human beings who are able of themselves to impart purpose and direction to their lives. The need for imagination, a sense of truth, and a feeling of responsibility. These three forces are the very nerve of education. I mean, come on, you can't get more powerful than that. And Rumi, I mean, me and Paul Chek have been going back and forth on Rumi for the last year. My dad was, a Rumi poet, because that's my bloodline, Farsi, and that's my first language. And so Rumi had a way of just showing the most poignant perspectives of life, so clean and so clear, and articulate it in a way that anyone can be inspired by it. And you're left with a sense of awe, where all of a sudden your mind expands in that instance when those codes are dropped into you, because that's what language is, the logos, right? It's the coding. That's what the Bible, first we had the word, before God, the word. That's all codes, everything, the seance, everything about it. Wherever you are and whatever you do, be in love. He's saying that, 1,000 years ago, these pains you feel are messengers. Listen to them. Right? Like, okay, yes, you're right. Like, I'm feeling distortion. Okay, that's a message. What can I take from that distortion? What can I learn from that? A few more that I really like. Only from the heart can you touch the sky. We carry inside us the wonders we seek outside us.
That is a beautiful way to finish the podcast, my brother.
Right?
Just want to say thank you so much, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure. We've covered a lot of ground today, and we could talk for days, no doubt. When you come to Australia, our doors are wide open for you, brother. We love you, and thank you so much.
It's an honor, everybody. It's an honor. Thank you, Pete.
The information, views, and opinions expressed in this podcast should not be treated as a substitute for nutritional, medical, or other advice by a qualified professional. Guests in this podcast express their own opinions, experiences, and conclusions. Nothing in this podcast should be used to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any medical condition. Neither Pete Evans nor any sponsor endorse any views, opinions, or conclusions expressed or shared in this podcast.